Hello everyone. Today's my lecture is on thalamus. So first of all about the introduction. So the term thalamus that derives from a Greek word that means inner chamber or meeting place. The thalamus that is a large ovoid mass of grey matter situated bilaterally in diencephalon. Both the thalami form about 80% of the diencephalon. Thalami on both the sides are connected in their rostral portion by means of an intermediate mass. And caudal portions are more widely separated by corpora quadrigemina. So this is a major parts of the thalamus, that is a anterior part, medial part and lateral part, and this one is a internal medullary lamina. So this one is a video of anatomy of thalamus.
Covered by the two cerebral hemispheres. The diencephalon is the structure of the central nervous system that is at the center of the brain. It contains masses of gray matter such as the thalamus and the hypothalamus that play tremendous roles in the organism. The thalamus is a nuclear complex that occupies the most part of the diencephalon. It acts essentially as a relay to the vast majority of the sensory inputs that go up to the cerebral cortex. It also plays a very important role in movements and emotions. The thalamus is made up of two masses of gray matter, right and left, each taking an ovoid shape. These two parts are often joined together in the center by the interthalamic adhesion. The thalamus consists of multiple nuclei. Each of these nuclei plays a very important role. The thalamus marks the lateral side of the third ventricle, and it is surrounded on top and front by the body and the head of the two lateral ventricles. The hypothalamus, located directly below and in front of the thalamus, is much smaller in size and volume. Nevertheless, its role in the body is not the least. In fact, the hypothalamus contains several distinct nuclei that provide numerous functions, including thermoregulation, appetite, and regulation of the sleep-wake cycle. It also plays a capital role in modulating the autonomic nervous system. The hypothalamus is the real endocrine engine of the whole body. It controls the secretions of the pituitary gland, which produces the most important hormones of the body.
Now the internal structures of thalamus. Like the other parts of the brain, the thalamus consists of grey matter mainly and white matter. White matter. So white matter is scanty in thalamus and it includes stratum zonale, external medullary lamina and internal medullary lamina. So first of all, stratum zonale, that is a thin layer of the white matter covering the superior surface of thalamus, and external medullary lamina, that is a thin layer of white matter covering the lateral surface of the thalamus, and it consists of thalamocortical and corticothalamic fibers. Internal medullary lamina, that is a Y-shaped sheet of white matter placed vertically in the grey matter of thalamus, and it also consists mainly of internuclear thalamic connection. Then about the grey matter. So grey matter, that is divided into three masses of the nuclei by Y-shaped internal medullary lamina, anterior part, lateral part and medial part. Then classification of the thalamic nuclei. So first of all, anatomically, the thalamic nuclei can be classified as anterior group of the nuclei. So the mass of the grey matter that enclosed within the bifurcation of the internal medullary lamina, that is known as anterior nucleus. So this one, that is a anterior nucleus. Then lateral group of nuclei. The mass of the grey matter present in the lateral part of the thalamus is subdivided into ventral and dorsal group of nuclei, and each containing three nuclei. So this one is a ventral group and this one is a dorsal. Okay. So first of all, ventral group of nuclei, that includes ventral anterior nucleus. So this one is a ventral anterior nucleus, then ventral lateral nucleus. This one is a latroventral nucleus, then ventral posterior or posteroventral nucleus, which is further divided into two parts, ventral posterolateral nucleus and ventral posteromedial nucleus. Medial and lateral geniculate body that are present in the posterior zone of the ventral group of nuclei. Then dorsal group of the nuclei, that includes lateral dorsal nucleus, this one, lateral dorsal nucleus, lateral posterior nucleus and pulvinar, that one. So that all these are dorsal group of nuclei. Now medial group of nuclei. So dorsomedial nuclei present in the medial part of the thalamus, then centromedial nucleus and other interlaminar nuclei that are present within the internal medullary lamina, and midline nuclei that lie between the medial part of the thalamus and ependyma of the third ventricle. Now, functional classification of thalamic nuclei. So, they can be grouped under two divisions: non-projection nuclei and specific projection nuclei. Now, non-specific projection nuclei that receive the impulses for diffuse secondary response from the reticular activating system and project diffusely to whole of neocortex, and that include midline nuclei and centromedial nucleus. Now, specific projection nuclei that receive the specific sensation and project to specific portion of neocortex and limbic system. Depending upon the type of sensation, the specific projection nuclei can be divided into four groups: specific sensory relay nuclei, motor control nuclei, visceral efferent control nuclei, and integrative and perceptual function control nuclei. First of all, specific sensory relay nuclei that includes medial geniculate body, lateral geniculate body, and posteroventral group of nuclei. So this one is a lateral geniculate and this one is a medial geniculate and ventral posterolateral nucleus. Now, motor control nuclei that includes ventrolateral group of nuclei and ventral anterior nucleus. So, ventral anterior and ventral lateral nucleus. Then visceral efferent control nuclei. This includes anterior group of nucleus and dorso-medial nuclei. So, this is anterior group of nuclei and dorso-medial nucleus. Then integrative and perceptual function control nuclei that includes pulvinar nucleus, lateral posterior nucleus and dorsal lateral nucleus. So that is a flow chart or division of the thalamic nucleus. So thalamus that are divided into anterior, medial and lateral. Anterior part that includes anterior nucleus, medial there is a medial dorsal nucleus, lateral that are divided into two, lateral and ventral group. Lateral group includes lateral dorsal, lateral posterior and pulvinar, and ventral group includes ventral anterior nucleus, ventral lateral nucleus, ventral posterior nucleus that includes ventral posteromedial and ventral posterolateral nucleus. Now, connection of thalamus. So, afferent and efferent connection of the various thalamic nuclei based on their functional classification, like connection of non-specific projection nuclei and connection of specific projection nuclei. So, these are the major connection of thalamus. So, these are a basal nuclei that includes caudate nucleus, putamen and globus pallidus. This one is a cerebral cortex. So, these are a major connection of thalamus. So, first of all, connection of non-specific projection nuclei. These are functionally associated with the diffuse thalamic projection, which produces marked changes in the electrical activity of cerebral cortex when they are stimulated. And non-specific projection nuclei that includes centromedian nucleus and other intralaminar nuclei and midline nuclei. So, afferents to these nuclei that comes from the reticular activating system, basal ganglia and other thalamic nuclei. and efferents from these nuclei that project to the stratum and entire neocortex.